Thank you so much, you two, for being here today and letting me interview you. I was able to watch the film the other night. I was really excited to watch it. I actually watched it twice now.
Wow.
Um, yeah, I enjoyed it a lot, and I'm excited for seeing it tomorrow as well. But to begin, I was wondering if you both could kind of tell me, like non-spoiler, obviously, but like kind of tell me what the film's about and kind of how what it means to us for this movie.
Okay.
The author speaks.
Sure. The story's about a former priest now working for, we'll just say, NASA for the interview, who's sent to investigate a remote space observatory that's gone offline after receiving a mysterious signal from deep space. And along the way, you know, it becomes a horror film very, very quickly. Mhm.
Absolutely. It it started off with like the like the sci-fi feel, and it switched very quickly to horror. And that was kind of a cool genre melding that I enjoyed quite a bit.
Cool. Well, thank you.
Um, what was you both wrote this and directed this film. Um, how did the concept kind of come to be for you?
Uh, the concept could be traced back to just a love and affinity for a specific area of cinema, where I guess I found myself going to the cinema a lot. You know, I was in high school and it was in the 80s, and I saw a lot of great physical effects, makeup effects driven movies that weren't computer generated images. And when I was trying to plot out what I wanted to do next, I thought, why not revisit that era and try
Mhm.
and, kind of create a bit of an homage, a bit of a retro feel, but still tell a modern story. So I think the modern elements come when we're trying to meld science and religion. Um, Not that those are modern topics, but you know what I mean. So
Absolutely. That was, one of the things I noticed is that we kind of always have this like war between religion and science. And this film explores that quite a bit, and where I liked that you don't quite see that intersection quite so much in this way. It was like a new take on that subgenre.
sure.
Um, so for you, Mr. Bradley, you're a horror legend. Hellraiser is something that's well, I didn't grow up on it. My mom wouldn't let me watch horror films growing up, but as a teenager and adult, you were someone that was on my screen. What kind of drew you to this film?
The script,
Okay.
uh, which is always the starting point. My agent contacted me. Here's an offer. Here's a script. Take a look. Let me know. That's where we always start from. Um, he had had a client work for Doug previously, so he was vouching for him
Mhm.
because it's a slightly different setup. Uh, because Doug, well, he'll be able to explain it better than I, because he has this home base here, which is an educational uh, um, uh, of institution. Would
Mm,
that be a word?
or asylum.
I was going to say it sounds a bit grim. I'm sure it isn't. And Doug himself says, see, that's his day job, and at the weekend he's an independent filmmaker. So it's an unusual kind of setup. But as I say, my agent was vouching for his bona fides, so that was all cool. Um, and then it is the script, and it's a well written script.
Mhm.
They aren't all. Um, an intelligently written script, and the that everything that's already been talked about, the interface between um, science and religion, and uh, exploration of outer space and exploration of inner space, and then uh, the levels of It's interesting. You hear quite often these days people criticizing for science for having become, in some ways, a religion, and you hear people talking about the scientific consensus. We heard a lot through the pandemic and the lockdown about scientific consensus. Now, to me, consensus doesn't exist in science, because science is not about belief. It's not, science is about observation and experiment. And if science establishes that something appears to fit the experimental picture, and then somebody comes along with some new evidence that seems to suggest a different picture, science embraces the difference and moves on, whereas religion remains entrenched in its fundamentalism. There is a truth, which was a truth and is a truth and will always be a truth, and you can't challenge it and you can't break it. So all of that was intriguing me. Plus, it's an apocalypse movie. That can only be a good thing. And I was also being intrigued by my own character, Archbishop. We established now that he is Archbishop Jenkins, who, as Doug said, has been attached to the space agency as a kind of theological / spiritual advisor, which seems slightly strange. But he says, well, who better than a man of the cloth who was, in touch with the bigger issues to deal with a subject like that. It may sound a bit questionable, and there may be reasons for having your doubts about Archbishop Jenkins, but I couldn't comment on that really. So it's all of that, and then even that beyond that, and again, I don't want to go into spoilers, but with stuff that my own character has to say later, there's also that element which is actually present in Hellraiser of is there a hell, and if there is a hell, where is hell, and is there a place, is there a physical place, or is it a place that we create for ourselves? I think it's John Milton's lines always sum it up best. I will paraphrase horribly, I've no doubt, so apologies to Mr. Milton if he's listening, but I think it's actually the introductory quote to Paradise Lost, to the effect that the mind is a place entire unto itself, and can make a heaven of hell or a hell of heaven. And I think we get some of that interplay in the movie. So there's a lot going on, Plus there's a monster.
Something you said there.
And this movie we all love nuns, so
absolutely. Something you said there though is that this movie does really make you think at the end of this. You're constantly thinking about the concept of hell and hell. Don't want to say too much because people need to go see this movie, but I was thinking about it even this morning. I was preparing, I was like, man, this just can't get out of my head. So it's cool to kind of see that play out. Throughout the film, Archbishop Jenkins kind of shows up, kind of like a connective tissue through the film, but it's a lot of on screens and interactions through that. Was there any challenges? Because it seems like maybe we are not physically in these scenes with these people, but you're also interacting and you're giving the emotional connection with these individuals. Was there any challenges to filming it that way?
For me, honestly, yes. I much prefer interacting. Acting is interaction. Acting is reaction. But I was playing most of there's a lengthy piece in a confessional, which is slightly different, but otherwise I'm playing most of my stuff straight to camera. And that's it's a different kind of different kind of discipline. It's not easy, and I'm much prefer being around other actors, which I never was.
And yeah,
I
I can understand the feeding off the energy
tyrant
a
to
little bit.
myself.
Um, so Mr. Schulze, you know, you have this 80s style for the film, you know, a lot of practicals. How was it, you know, like creating the design for this monster? Because it's very unique, you know, it has religious, you know, based appearances. It also reminded me, I don't know if you're a Doctor Who fan, but it reminded me a little bit of the Silence, which I really appreciated. But like, how did that come to be? You know, like the use of
Sure.
practical effects in the monster.
Yeah, well, we'd have to credit Dan Phillips, who's a local Michigan makeup artist, and
Okay.
so Dan got the script early on, and you know, we met, and he began to, and we brought in an illustrator to do concept sketches, and we began to move a bit away from how the creature was written on paper, and
Mhm.
you know, sort of the themes of the film began to take on a life of their own. So you know, we went at one point, we said to the illustrator, you know, well, let's just go to this far end, and what would we come up with almost a literal type of translation. And so hence we began playing around with images of thorns, you know, that pertain to the story in the film. And it just sort of grew from there, quite honestly. It became very natural. And but Dan had a big hand in helping that vision come to be. And all great you know, films, I think, share the same philosophy, and that is the technicians and as well as the cast all need to be brilliant. And
Mhm.
so you surround yourself with very good people, and you've got a better shot at seeing your vision, you know, come to fruition in the way you might like. So, so great kudos to Dan and his team for that monster. Yeah.
Yeah, it looks absolutely brilliant on screen. So that's fantastic. You know, and again, being kind of a local guy here in Michigan, getting to have the people that are more local work on that as well is
Yeah.
fantastic.
For sure.
Um, what was it like shooting in Michigan for you? You know, I think that, you know, we used to have a bigger film industry, and then it kind of died down when the tax incentives kind of disappeared. So I guess, what is it about Michigan that you feel other people maybe should start looking towards our state again?
Well, you know, before the incentives, you know, Michigan was still and still kind of is a thriving spot for industrial and different types of film, right? And then,
Mhm.
of course, we've got the automotive giants here and all that commercial work
Yes.
that, even though a lot of the running footage is shot in Middle America, the producers are still here in Detroit
Mhm.
and the ad agencies, and so all that's conceptualized here in our state. The incentives sure brought some big Hollywood films here that never would have. But either way, you know, we were just talking between interviews. You know, if you travel up to the Tequamana Falls, you know, where the rivers run copper colored, or if you head down to the salt mines in Detroit City, you know, and
Wait,
or
what? There are salt
yeah, there are
mines
salt mines below the
Mhm.
city.
in the city?
Yes, yeah, below the
Jesus,
city streets.
I didn't
And
know.
you Google and see a lot of pictures. But you know, Michigan has a vast resource for art, you know, production design and location
Mhm.
abilities. And so Michigan's a great place to make movies. And I always want, you know, I've wanted to make films since seeing 2001: A Space Odyssey as a kid,
Hmm.
but I never wanted to
Cool.
relocate to LA.
Mhm.
I like it here in Michigan,
You just love the cold weather, huh?
and yeah, and I complain daily about the weather. So there you go.
That's part of being living in here. We don't like the weather, but we love the seasons.
Yeah, yeah,
Well,
exactly.
I live just outside Pittsburgh now, so I'm on the same, you know, I'm a
So
fellow.
you understand.
I do.
Yeah.
Yes.
Thorns
Um,
will be set in the Caribbean.
so I guess final question for both of you is, what is, I guess, if you were to we want people to come to see this, obviously, and it's a great film, and how would you sell it to someone who's maybe not into or just getting into horror? Like, what would you want them to know about the film?
Wow.
Would you
Uh,
want me to go first?
Go ahead. I have no
Okay.
idea.
Well,
Um,
what I'm going to focus on real quickly, and I think Doug will answer the question better than I would, but I do want to be clear about tomorrow is the premiere, but
Mhm.
the film releases nationally starting on the 23rd, which is of the Friday from now. So February 23rd, you'll be able to find it in Imagine theaters around Michigan,
Mhm.
out in Kansas City and in San Diego as well. But
Okay.
then March 13th, the film's going to expand to more cities. So it's not just about obviously our big red carpet.
Sure.
It's the 23rd and so forth. But why go see this film? Did you come up with a response? Or
well, all the elements that we talked about already, really, that come together in this film. You're going to see an intelligently written plot, very well directed and well performed movie with some cool
Absolutely.
special effects and a strong story, which, as you have said, is going to stay with you and will be maybe a little bit of a brainworm. The other thing I would say is, Doug's talking about the movie expanding and getting a wider release. The more people turn out to see this film locally on its initial release, the more and the wider that is going to happen. And that gives more power to Doug's elbow down the line. And that's going to help more independent filmmaking in Michigan. And also, as I've said, I think what Doug has achieved here on limited resources is remarkable. And at a time when movie making is being dominated by the eye-popping budgets that the big studios are spending on movies, and when they also largely control the distribution. For Doug to get this movie into theaters at all, I think, is a remarkable achievement, and credit to Imagine for getting behind that and helping to push that. So if you turn out to see this film in the theaters, you're striking a blow for the little guy. And I think that's important too.
That was said beautifully, and I can't think of anything better to end this on. Thank you two so much for spending this time with me, and I look forward to seeing it again tomorrow. And absolutely, everybody should go see this film when it's in theaters because it deserves all the recognition that it's going to hopefully get. So, thank you so much.
cheers.
Cool. You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you.